Hello, Earthlings. Welcome to RGN, the regular guy news, the least pretentious name in news. I am your host. I am your anchor. I am a regular guy. It's me, Dan Black. Let's talk about stuff. Hey, welcome back to RGN. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. You'll notice we were off last week to be thankful. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. I hope you stayed safe, and I hope you still found a way to be joyous in this time where many would say joy is not on the shelves, folks. But we're back, RGN, Regular Guy News. We're here post-election in a different world. And, hey, before we get into all of it, just know this podcast is grassroots Bernie Sanders style. So if you want to help this podcast, if you like this podcast, you want to keep it alive, you want to watch it thrive, you don't want to see this podcast die at the ripe age of 78 years old in my house in Vermont. No, that's sad booking for Bernie. I love Bernie. But give us 5 stars on Apple Podcast and tell one friend about the show. Spread the word. Just be like, hey, this podcast is pretty cool. These guys don't fucking pretend to know everything. They feel like me. With a little bit of jest, folks. Yeah, listen, we got a lot to talk about today. We have too much to talk about, people will say. But before I do, let's introduce the only RGN correspondent. She's out in the field, somewhere out in America, in the heartland. Ms. Erin Finnerty, can we connect you via satellite? Erin.
Dan?
Erin.
Dan, are you there?
Yeah, Erin,
Dan,
we're here. We got you.
Okay. Hello, Dan.
Erin, welcome back to the program.
Thank you
I hope
so
you
much.
had a great Thanksgiving.
Yes, I was off last week.
Where are you
Embedded
reporting
in parts
from?
unknown. Today I'm coming to you live from Los Angeles, California.
Okay.
The second floor of my apartment, approximately 1 mile from your house.
Wow. Okay. So you have a second story, which
I have a third story too.
Wow, which would classify you, and what, according to the RGN index, that would make you a coastal elite.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Sorry.
Sorry, everyone.
If you have more than 2 floors, you live on a coast, you're a coastal elite. That's how that works.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing to do with your tax returns, income, anything, AGI, anything like that. No.
Mm-mm.
AGI,
AGI, never heard of her.
Absolutely. AGI, one of my favorite performers of the modern age. Taking a sip. But anyway, guys, it's crazy because this podcast, we were discussing the election for so long, and an update on the election since we last came at you guys via RGN. The election was over. It's been over for a month or so. Actually, in like 2 days, it'll be exactly a month, right? From when we're recording this.
And the 7th was when we
called it.
When Uncle Joe got to
Yes, our
270.
President-elect Joseph Q. Biden Jr., the man with the broken foots, broke his foot playing with dogs. You got to respect that.
Playing with a rescue dog, Major.
Absolutely. That always brings warm, fuzzy feelings to our hearts. We are dog people on this podcast.
Oh, yeah.
But since that, we were talking about all the lawsuits. We were on the podcast going through all of them. It's still going the same way. As a matter of fact, now since we've been on the air, Biden has started receiving his intelligence briefings. His first one was, I believe, yesterday. Was Monday, November 30th.
His
right?
daily presidential briefings, the binder.
Yeah, he started getting them in Wilmington, Delaware, which, by the way, they're like, his house has now been retrofit to get those briefings. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, what do they got to do to the house? Wouldn't you love to see what they do to the house?
Maybe put how do they deliver them? What's the system?
This is what I imagine retrofitting a house means. Is you got to put a lot of aluminum on the walls. You got to block out unnecessary information capturing rays. You can tell, by the way, this is RGN, the least pretentious name in news. We know not that much.
Literally nothing. Well, let me tell you,
and a big satellite, Erin, like a big cable guy style satellite on the roof. That's
To
what I think.
retrofit, I thought the briefings were maybe he's getting them digitally, but I thought it was like a physical, like, here you go, President-elect Biden, like a binder,
I
the
mean,
way our friend Barack Obama received them when he was in
friend
the
of the
White
show,
House.
Barack Obama.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but Aaron, that makes a lot of sense. But retrofit, I live in LA, and retrofitting means to add more to the infrastructure for
Mm.
earthquakes. So
Maybe
I
they
think
added like a dumb waiter, like from the outside to the inside, so he can just like
yes,
wheel it into his room.
I think they have to add. They came in, they've been digging a hole, and they've been putting a bunker underneath
Ooh.
Biden Palace. Over there in Delaware.
Hmm.
No, but anyway, so also today, Bill Barr, Department of Justice, the Attorney General, said that there's no evidence of fraud. So honestly, I think weirdly, as of today, a month later, I think today is the day that it's fully locked in that Biden will become the president on January
Yeah.
20th.
It's
Not that
just
there was
been
any
chipping.
question.
Yeah, no question, but it's been like the case has been growing and growing. I think at this point it's just like, especially after the Wisconsin recount, which gave Biden more votes.
Yeah. Yeah, but Bill Barr has been such a champ, like a stooge
I know,
for
such a stooge.
Donald Trump. He's never broke with him, and he's like bent that role has been like bent to a crazy degree
Yeah.
to accommodate the president. They're not supposed to be so in cahoots. Like even Jeff Sessions, who was a fucking stooge, even he was like recused himself from the Russia investigation. Like
Yeah. Do you think this is Barr trying to like salvage his political career before he goes down with the Titanic?
I don't know because the, like that guy is such a deep the stoogiest of
I
stooges
know, I
that
know.
it's so hard to imagine that Trump didn't sign off on that and that he's thinking like, hey, this is how I don't know, keep you in the pocket. But I was waiting for a Trump tweet to drop to be like, Bill Barr, a total loser. Like
Yeah,
it's just
yeah,
like,
yeah.
wow, that's a guy like that's an example of and they said he's turning on Giuliani. Like he's turning on everybody. It is really
His in his
truly
own party, like his cronies, governors, judges, people he appointed. Forget about it.
um yeah, it's kind of nuts. But it was kind of weird because I went to Thanksgiving and I went I spent my Thanksgiving in Lake Arrowhead, which
In a
sounds like
large
Michigan, but
group,
it's
no
California.
masks.
Large group, no masks. The minimum age was 85.
Yep,
Um,
it was a kissing party too. So like a
yes,
lot of droplets.
absolutely, absolutely. One of the requirements was you had to just lick a random pole before you show up.
Mm-hmm.
Metal pole.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the requirements.
The town poll, we all licked it.
The town pole had to be in the proximity at least 10 feet from a hospital.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Anyway, I did it in Lake Arrowhead, and so there was we like got an Airbnb there. It was really beautiful. Lake Arrowhead sounds like it's Michigan, but it's not.
No, it's not Michigan.
Anything that's lake, anything I think is Michigan.
I mean,
But
I'm from a lake town, so
yeah, you're a Michigander. Which
Shout out Walled Lake, Michigan.
is it
Anyone?
Michigander the best? What's the best? I don't know. What do you call that? Uh, a a a a, a native name?
Nickname? I think Michigander is the only one we've got, right?
Well, you could be like a Long Islander.
Long
That's what I am.
Islander, New York
A
Islanders,
New Yorker.
New Yorker. I'm just
A
a Michigander,
Delawarean.
Detroiter,
Is
Walled
Delawarean
Lakean.
real? Or
I think that's real.
a Floridian is real.
Dela-
Floridian is real.
Mhm.
Like he's a Floridian. That's actually pretty cool to be like
Californian,
Californian. Yeah, that one. It just feels like it's too known. You know,
mass heads.
you call him like a North Dakotite.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. Anyway, all right.
Anyhow.
But yeah, so I was up there. There was a lot of Trump flags. And you know, when I started
Ooh,
to
I know.
realize like post election is like there really were like two kinds of Trump supporters, you know? And I
Mhm.
wonder where they land, like going forward. I'm actually curious where they end up, you know? I hope they end up just back as like the in not caring about the last
Right.
president.
Yeah.
Just being like, hey, who's I don't know, get into Marco Rubio, whatever you're gonna
Yeah,
do.
let's
I
go
don't
with the
know.
flow.
You know what I mean? Like you don't like.
Hmm.
I hope no one pledges their allegiance to a ex-president. To lead again. Um, though if you're an Obama head, you're kind of always like, hey, let's bring Michelle in because
No
then you
one's
get
a bigger
Obama.
Obama head than me, and
Right.
I would be fine with that.
And that's what I'm saying. The same thing.
Malia, let's get Sasha, Bo, Sunny. Like, let's get the whole crew.
My parents, I remember like when Hillary was running, it's like you get Bill also.
Well, it's a package deal. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you get Bill also. So maybe Melania will. Oh, she wasn't born here.
Ooh, big yikes. Big
I can't
yikes.
think of someone who would want that job less than Melania
Oh,
Trump.
God.
Who would
Yeah.
want that job less than her?
No one.
No.
Baron, maybe.
Yeah. Anyway, so but there's two kinds. There's "Make America Great Again" Trump people, which is like, yeah, all right, that's just the catchphrase. It was
Mm-hmm.
Reagan's slogan, whatever. And then there's the "No More Bullshit" Trump flag. You know what I mean? Have you seen that
Right,
one?
right, right. It
There's
sounds familiar. Rings a
yeah,
bell.
there's a flag that is Trump 2020, no more
Right,
bullshit.
right, right,
And
right.
you're like, I don't see any of the just Trump 2020 flags anymore. Those are people taking those down, but the no more bullshit ones are still flying high.
Yeah, yeah. That I mean that
But
phrase is tried and true, I guess.
those are dying a slow death. I almost appreciate a flag that says no more bullshit on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you know what's interesting? You went to a place that sounds like it's like, nature based, like
Right.
maybe in the mountains. And we were in Idlewild, California, the days after
Oh
the
yeah.
election. And we also saw some Trump 2020 flags while we were up there, which is interesting because it's like a cute, like mountain town, but.
Yeah, but it's funny, now we're trying to all like unite and blah blah blah, whatever. And and
Hmm.
and, and it's interesting because I said to my wife, I was like, like I bet if I knocked on these people's door and I was like, "Hey, why do you support Trump?" I would understand their reasoning. You know what I mean? Because it's two. We have two choices. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? In a
Hmm.
crazy time, and like that'll tie us into like the stuff we're going to talk about today. Like times are fucking confusing. I mean, man, I like getting an answer. This podcast theme is like I'm so confused. I'm gonna just look into this and
Right.
like I feel like this is what everybody should be saying. Like every podcast should be like this shit. Like I'm skeptical of anybody who's like, I know the deal 100%. Who's so steadfast in their belief. You know what I mean? Like I
Right,
don't know
right, right.
how do because I'm again I always say it, not a dumb guy. And so yeah. Anyway, you know what I mean? Like I think people are like I voted and they're like, here's my issue, and that's what they
Hmm.
consider bullshit. I
Yeah.
have a hard time believing if I knock on the doors, people will be like, I think COVID's a hoax. Like we should be able to call it the Kung flu. I have like a hard time being like that's their
That's
platform.
generous of you, but there are like a great like a great fraction of Trump voters who would say that.
Okay. Well, anyway, that's the past.
Generous assessment, Dan.
Let's leave the past in the past.
Yeah.
And by the way, just to let you guys know, yeah, so anyway, it looks like Biden he's announcing his cabinet, he's getting briefings. It looks like we have a transfer of power going down, which is
Mm-hmm.
pretty exciting and cool. And see people and Republicans are breaking with Trump. What's getting really tricky and is really interesting is we have this Georgia runoff that's going to happen in January,
Yeah.
and Trump's claiming elections are no good and are rigged and they don't count your vote. So if you're a Republican, you're kind of like, why would I vote, right? It's like counter.
Yeah.
It's called a nombo, right? I call it Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, the
It's when two
nombo.
cards don't work together well. Like that's a nombo. You can't claim an election. You can't ask for like literally Trump's going down there this week. Like you can't ask for votes from people while also saying the system is fully rigged.
Right. Well, I mean, it comes back to the logic doesn't make sense because if all your cronies legitimately won their elections
Right.
in red states, then was that fraud? Like
I
we're all
guess.
on the same ballot here.
Yeah, I guess so. But anyway, so before we get into the topic for this week,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to, and I'm excited about the stuff we're going to talk about post-election. I think I think now we can really get into what I'm gravitating towards is now we can really get into mis and disinformation, you know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and without Trump fueling the fire, like there's some kind of end in sight. Not entirely,
Yeah.
but there's an end in sight for like he was going at such a rapid pace of flooding the zone with mis and disinformation. Well, I guess for him it's disinformation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Misinformation is when you just get it wrong, right?
Yeah.
He's actual disinformation. He has disinformation campaign. So I just feel like now, like Biden calms the fire down, right? It calms.
Oh yeah.
It brings down the temperature. So now we can kind of decipher some things, and I'm sure there'll be a new fucking train wreck for us to decipher. But at least it feels like to me I can wrap my head around some stuff. You know?
Right.
Okay.
Well, and the
so,
subject isn't the disinformation anymore, hopefully.
absolutely, the subject is what the truth. You know?
What is
That's what we're here.
disinformation?
And really, that's really what I am, you know, Aaron. Like, if you had to describe like what I am, like I'm like a truth teller. You know what I mean?
Oh my God. Yeah, 100%. Like, if I had to describe Dan in one word, it would be truthful.
Absolutely, yeah, truthful. Like I would be describing him as, I mean, I would say there's only two words you could use: is the truth. I'm like the human embodiment of the truth. Absolutely. But
It's your
remember,
middle
hey,
name.
guys, before I forget to say this, we have a mailbag on this podcast. You can send us an email at regularguynews@gmail.com. Next week, we'll get into some of your emails. If you have something you want to respond to on this podcast or something that you want to ask us, something else to dive into, something that confuses you, and you're like, you want investigative people who have no bias at all, okay? I'm not funded by Vox, whatever that is. Anyway,
There's
so
no political action campaigns here. No
absolutely.
RGN PAC.
No, maybe in the future of the RGN pack, you know,
Well,
I'll fund
God willing.
exclusively pro wrestlers to run for office. It works. Okay, so here's my topic for this week as we hit on disinformation. Okay, I started thinking about this podcast, a lot of stuff I listen to. I started thinking about the concept of the political influencer, right? Like the job of like, I'm an influencer of politics. Like these are like, you know, we're going to focus a lot on Candace Owens today. But like Candace Owens, I guess maybe you could put Ben Shapiro in that camp.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a gray area because especially on the right, it's more gray area because on the right, they're put on Fox News, which poses as a traditional news source, right? Whereas I do believe the left, and when you could hit me up in the mailbag if you think I'm wrong, regularguynews@gmail.com. The left seems more careful about just putting internet people on. They tend to have more like New York Times journalists, and right.
And you're like lefty kind of political influencers, you know, maybe I'm wrong, seem more legit because you have like the Pod Save America crew who worked for Obama,
right?
Have a legitimate platform, their podcast. So
right, that's like Jon Favreau and right, not Chef Jon Favreau, a Mandalorian Favreau. A different
not
Favreau.
that one. Different. Same exact name. Same exact kind of obscure name. Different guy.
Yeah, completely different guy. But like, so because it's like, all right. So I was listening to Tim Dillon's podcast. If people know who Tim Dillon is, and he's a comedian. Okay, he's fucking hilarious. Tim Dillon. Okay, he might not be for you. Because you know. I find him funny because first off, I've been on shows with him before in the past, and he kills. The guy's fucking funny. Like he kills. He has a very unique point of view. He's very Long Island. He's where I'm from. His podcast is very popular. He'll call his podcast like a fact-free zone. It's very funny, but also like this week his guest was Candace Owens. you know? And he
Interesting.
goes on Joe Rogan a bunch, and he's been on Alex Jones' show. And I think there's part of him that thinks it's funny to speak to these people, you know?
Yeah.
But it is confusing what he's up to. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But
That is a little confusing.
it's confusing because you're like, Alex Jones, man. Like, Alex Jones, which maybe we could do a podcast on, has said really some unforgivable stuff, you know, and has shown not really remorse for those things. I don't know. Where, like, I'm okay with people messing up. I'm okay with people getting something wrong and then going back on it.
Hmm.
That doesn't seem to be what this is. And it made me think about, like, Alex Jones. I'm calling these guys political influencers because, like, there's money. There's a lot of money in being arrogant enough to just say things like they're fact, say things you've
Right.
heard.
Yeah. And
And
for
that's
some
like,
people, you can get on TV, you can be on the news.
right. Like, if you have no shame, if you have no integrity, and you also don't have guilt, right? You
Hmm.
can make a lot of money by just spouting off bullshit that sounds correct, right?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
spouting off saying things that is a sexy talking point. Um, and that's what these political influencers are. And there's a lot of money in it. And they're basically like conspiracy tellers. They're like conspiracy pushers that are posing as political truth tellers. As like, and so
But you can't
here's
even,
my
all you can say is political truth tellers because there's no real name for what they are. It's not like political experts or journalists or insiders because they're just people who present their thoughts as fact online. There's no like good name for it.
right. And so it's like, it's very weird because now they start mingling with comedians, and it just makes me think about the relationship between the political influencer and the comedian. And I'm a defender of comedians and free speech. Like, it's really important to me. And so a guy like a Tim Dillon, who I'm not friends with Tim Dillon, by the way. I've been on shows with him. He doesn't know who I am. Like, um, he doesn't know who I am or anything. I'm just from afar. I'm like, this guy's fucking funny. I've seen him kill in rooms. Funny, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, in my head, he's allowed to say things and fail because he's not posing as a truth teller. He's like, I'm a comedian. It's very clear he's a comedian. So he's allowed to, like, essentially bomb, which is like say something that might have been funny and that he might think is funny, and it's not funny. Maybe it's provocative. Maybe it's offensive. That's okay. Like, we shouldn't be attacking comedians. The comedians are
Mm-hmm.
allowed to, if they're saying, I'm a comedian, well, then you should be smart enough to recognize, like, this person is a comedian, right? So then that's
Right.
gray area. You could argue something's too far, blah, blah, blah. But, like, policing comedy is, like, just a waste of time because if somebody's on the stage at a place called the Comedy Store or a place called, like, Yuck Yuck Hut, right?
Or like you're someone who's known as a comedian.
Right. Then, like, you should be smart enough to, like, not base your whole political identity based off someone who's just trying to make you laugh while you eat chicken fingers, you know?
Right, right, right.
So I'll always defend those people. There are comedians where and I respect people who make people laugh, and there are comedians who I know people. I've been in rooms with other comics that are more part of my, let's call it community, and they'll be
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh, that guy," and I'm like, and also it's because like, uh, my wife will perform stand up. I'll see her perform. She'll be on a lineup at like the Improv or somewhere here in LA
Mm-hmm.
with some of these people who people just kind of recklessly write off, and I'm like, that guy fucking destroyed. Was that material stuff I would say? No, like, it's not my style at all. But like, you're saying there's not room for all these for people who are making a crowd
Right.
hysterically laugh. You know what I mean? And look, we
Mm-hmm.
can get into like the nuance of it, where it's like, hey, well, maybe it's too dirty, and then it turns the room, and you can get into all the comedian, like, drama and politics, and leave that for the comedians. You know what I mean? Leave that for the
Right,
comedians.
right.
But ultimately, comedians, I think we should protect and we should let them explore. I understand it gets tricky, but there has to be some accountability where it's like, same thing as you're playing Gears of War. right? Doesn't mean you should go out and go shoot somebody. You know, someone makes a
Right.
joke that offends you doesn't mean you should be offensive. Like, we have to
Mhm.
hold people to a higher standard so they can appreciate art, right? You could
Yeah.
look at a statue of like a naked woman and not be like, oh, I need to rip off that woman's clothes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm trying to talk about
Yeah,
like
yeah,
if
yeah.
you're looking at art, right?
Right.
But here's the big but. What is the excuse for the political influencer job? This new job. These people have to be held to a standard of high truth. These people are not allowed to mess up. They're not allowed.
I know, but there is no standard, right? Like it's
Right.
something that's so new and who are they accountable to, you know?
Right. And
It's not
so,
even like they have an audience where it's like, oh, they're making them laugh. It's like, well, you could argue that people's Twitter followers are an audience, but still there's no accountability to anyone above them about what they're saying.
yeah, if you're not, if your thing is you say, I'm not a comedian. Like Alex Jones does not call himself a comedian, right?
No. No.
Right? So then this guy's not allowed to say consistent factual inaccuracies that are conspiracy based. Like, you could get the number wrong of COVID deaths or something and be like,
Mhm.
correct it the next day, but that's not what's happening, you know. And so that's why in this episode I'm going to focus on Candace Owens. And before I get into the specifics of someone like this, I just want to say another thing that's interesting is, like, you got to understand about these political influencers. And I had so much information. I was actually like kind of stressed out while I was studying this. I was like,
Mhm.
I even texted Erin. I was like, I think I got to do a different topic today because like there's so much. It's so
We have to
overwhelming.
table this topic.
And it's like I had to like piece my thesis together here, you know. And my thesis here this week is like, I'm like, these people make. I understand the attraction of these people. I do. They make some good points, and they make some points that political people can't make because it would be like political suicide, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's pageantry to being a politician, which you can capitalize by being like, all right, like Mitch McConnell right now, for example, like very current reference. Mitch McConnell knows Trump lost this election, but he can't come out and say it. He's decided not to.
Mm-hmm.
He's not telling you the full truth of how he feels about it. He's like, no, so then he has to say a line, which is complete pageantry, complete political bullshit, which is the electoral college will choose on December 8th, and then we'll have which never before has been the date for when we mark right. That's just a new for when we choose president. Like, yes, that's, I guess technically that's when the votes come in, right? The electors vote, but before that it was once the president, we count it, we certify it, someone concedes, and the president-elect is chosen, and then we don't think about it at all, right? So now there's this new bar. That's political bullshit. So if you want to be a political influencer, you can live in that space where you go like, this guy's not saying the truth, he's bullshit. So you can be in there. Now, if you're a comedian, there's a lot of comedy to do in there, right? Because you can call someone's bullshit out. But if you're like, no, and then you want to put a conspiracy of why he's not saying this and blah, 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 then, right? So I'm talking about capitalizing on what politicians can't say, and then you go, they're all bullshit, and then you inject conspiracy in that gray zone. You know what I mean?
Present it as fact.
Right. It's confusing. And so you have to understand that these people will make some good points, right? They're going to make some really good points you agree with, and they're going to attract you in that way. But ultimately, you have to think about the fact that, like, there is a level of arrogance of these people who will pretend to just know everything and spout off facts, right? And you're saying, like, I think it's way more admirable to say, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's way more admirable to be like, so, okay, you get it. You have to understand, some people are bad news. Some people are Machiavellian capitalists. They see that it's money. And I really, really, if you look at, okay, so let's just go into Candace Owens because I don't know anything about this woman, okay? I heard her on Tim Dillon's podcast. I've seen some clips of her in the past. she definitely has a magnetism to her that I understand, which is like she's very articulate, she's very intelligent, she's very seems to be educated. She's really outspoken, very brave, very brave. Like she nothing phases her,
Mm-hmm.
and it's ripe for that kind of attention. She's also she's an attractive woman, and so I think that I get why she is
And she's young. She's
31 years
31,
old,
yeah.
right? She also, the reason to talk about her, she gets a lot of attention. Dave Chappelle brought her up in his monologue on SNL before, so it's like she's not going anywhere. But let's just break up. Like, to me, my thesis for you guys is that she's posing as a political influencer, as a truth teller, and here's truths that she's spouted in the past that are just deal breakers. Like, she should have no career in my mind, even if she has some other good points, because she's not a comedian. She's not fine. See, what's like, I have friends, it's like I've seen them do terrible acts, like terribly offensive acts, and then they find their voice later. I don't know if these people get that right to like find their political voice, find like where they can attract an audience from lies,
Right.
and how to present it,
Yeah, they're like workshopping their, like, in real time, their opinions to see what sticks.
Right. So that's what it feels like to me. Okay. So one thing she said when I was listening to her on Tim Dillon's podcast, is she was saying, like, here's the thing. She said she has like a no mask policy in her house. Okay. So like that is funny. Because she's like, I actively have a no mask policy in my house. That's attractive, provocative thing to say. Since everybody has these strict policies, imagine it's contrarian, it's kind of badass, right?
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, it's insanely reckless. It's ignoring science.
Well, and
right?
it's reckless to make it sound cool to do that and put that out there.
Right, and she couches all this in saying, the Democrats are going to use coronavirus to get Trump not elected, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you're like, oh, okay, yeah. I mean, there's truth to that, right? Like, I mean,
Trump's failure with coronavirus. Yeah. I mean, what do you want?
He couldn't have made it easier for them.
Yes.
Like he made it so they didn't even have to be. They could just be completely truthful and let his action speak for itself. But yeah, but I'm still saying like, okay, but saying that to be like, I have a no mask policy is conflating issues. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so also, okay, so to me, playing down this virus is all you need to really know about someone, because all the stuff that you're actively avoiding, like, for example, when you say that, she fits into that camp of people. I don't know if she's actually said this, but by saying I have a no mask policy in my house, I think you're actively falling into the category of somebody who's like, it's a 99% survival rate, right? Would you say that's fair? Okay.
Yeah,
I
haven't
would heard her directly say that. I don't
she said in February 2020, she said, now we're all going to die from the coronavirus, and called the left a doomsday cult for going along with this. So
right.
I think, and she said, under no circumstances will she ever get a vaccine that becomes available. So I think it's pretty safe to say she's probably one of those people.
Okay, cool, good. So you're right. So it's
and I'm sorry, Dan, one more thing. In April, she said that COVID-19 deaths were overcounted, and that health experts said it was more likely that, even though health experts said that deaths were being undercounted. This was early in the...
Right. That I had that fact here too. Right. So that's like one of her things on PolitiFact that was completely proven false. But I'm saying is that, like, okay, there's this, God, so right. There's this like false equivalency here of like, and here's an example of like, here's a good point, right? Here's someone's good point, which is like, a good point is calling out Gavin Newsom. for going to an indoor restaurant at French Laundry, like the fanciest restaurant you could possibly go to.
Indoor, no mask.
Indoor, no mask, right? Idiot. Stupidity that he did that, okay? Nancy Pelosi, she goes to get her hair done, right? Okay. And she's wearing no mask while she's getting her hair done, okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's a false equivalency to say because these people have screwed up, right? Or like Chris Cuomo got caught like doing a video coming out of the basement, right? And he got caught jogging with no mask. It's a false equivalency to say like these people fucking up is why you should have no mask policy in your house. And pushing that makes you pretty fucking evil, honestly.
Yeah, totally.
Right? Because here's an example. Honestly, don't get me wrong. I think Newsom's an idiot for that. I think Cuomo's an idiot for that. I think Pelosi's an idiot for that. I don't get nothing off from defending those guys, right? I just think like saying them fucking up and being humans and messing up in that way is different than being comfortable spreading something that is actually lethal. And that's the thing about right now. These people, you are seeing people's truest of true colors. If you are willing to tell people like masks are bullshit, how could you really have any regard for human life? Like what? The fact that you're so comfortable doing that, isn't there a line where you're like, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. Maybe I should back up and like, fine, you don't want to listen to like Chris Cuomo. You don't want to listen to Jake Tapper, whatever. But shouldn't you listen to scientists who are not
Doctors.
Just that, right? Dr. Jake, like whatever, Jake Atlas. Well, Jake Atlas is a wrestler. Dr. Scott Atlas, like who's
Scott
not
Atlas.
right, who's not qualified for this kind of stuff, right? He's not like what is it? I don't know. He's a
epidemiologist.
He's a radiologist, right?
Right.
Okay. So my point is that like, go look up people with long haul symptoms. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I just like, this is just a random woman. Okay, I just Googled this. And let's be honest, this site, it's called Desert News. I don't know what the fuck that is, okay? It might be, so it's fine. But it's quotes from this person, and I'm willing to assume she's not fake and lying. There's pictures of her. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's fine. You guys, if you think this woman from Utah, this seems to be a Utah newspaper, a local Utah newspaper. Okay, I don't know. I doubt they would write this fake article about long haul symptoms, right? I don't know. Okay, but let me just find the spot I wanted to read it from. But this woman, she had it. She didn't even. I don't even think she had terrible symptoms. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think she had like when she had coronavirus, but now she's like a couple months out from it, and she's scared that all of her symptoms might say. So listen to this woman. She goes. She's talking about her kids. She's like, my kids, they're scared when mom's going to pass out or feel dizzy or can't stand up. There's just a fear of not being able to wake up. And that's, I think, my biggest anxiety is that one of them is going to find me and it's going to be really hard on them. This woman's like scared because she's going to die. Her name's Sarah Lee Johnston. Her life has been profoundly altered. The 36-year-old deals with shortness of breath, severe fatigue, racing heart, but also has periodic blindness in her right eye. 36-year-old woman. She goes, I was healthy. I was kickboxing. I was doing yoga. I was chasing my kids around. We were hiking. I had a normal life. I would say that the chest pain, like thinking you're having a heart attack, was super scary. And then the blindness stuff and trying to figure that out has been really scary. Thinking, what if I permanently lose my vision? What if I'm having a stroke? What if this keeps getting worse? So it's like, I'm just saying, so when you go like 99% of people, how do you know you're not going to be like this long hauler, And this,
and like, why would you take that chance? Like, that really says like what kind of person you are. Like, I'm willing to take this gamble,
right?
That my friend or neighbor isn't going to be one of the 1% who's affected in this way.
And that's the difference between someone like me and someone like this person, Candace Owens. I don't make a lot of money doing the shit I do. She makes a ton because she's provocative. And sometimes I'm like, do I have to be like this? Do I have to just like become this fucking devil to make money? Like to make all this money? I'm like, no, I can't do it. I actually can't do it. You know? So I'm saying is that like, well, again, I take risks. I'm not a hypocrite. I do things that are too risky for COVID. I understand that. I do things where I'm like, I probably shouldn't do that. Okay, I tend to get tested regularly, and I find whatever my boundaries are, and they're not exactly what the doctors are recommending, but they're not a complete. I'm not being completely ignorant.
A 180 from what they're suggesting,
and I'm not telling you what you should do, right?
Yeah.
This woman's going around. She has this huge audience saying I have the no mask policy. No, that's all I need to know. So okay, so. You'll see. She'll say some really interesting facts. I saw her talking about George Floyd on Tim Dillon's podcast, and she's like, well, here's some other facts about it. And you're like, hey, you know what? That's some stuff. I didn't know that. I didn't know this. I didn't know that, right? But, like, also, what's your agenda pointing that out? Like,
right.
You're pointing out.
What's your agenda?
Right. And then it's like, okay, I get it. So you have some good points about George Floyd, which is like, he, I don't know, whatever. I don't want to get into the George Floyd thing. She did agree that it was, everyone agrees that what happened to George Floyd was terrible. She had some other points. But then she points out the guy, I forget his name, in Philly who was a bipolar guy who came at the cops with a knife. When his mother, and she ignores the facts, like his mother is the one who called the police because she couldn't get him under control. Right. And then the police showed their solution was to show up and shoot him with no tasers on them.
Yeah, in the back. Right.
Now, I get it. You could say, oh, police need to defend themselves. I understand that. But, like, isn't it their jobs to de-escalate? Isn't it their jobs to protect this woman? She called them so they wouldn't kill her kid. So my point is that I see her point. But how someone like this can be completely blind to the other point I'm making, which is also, it in your guts, completely valid. It's complicated.
Yeah.
So when you take one of those two issues, then you're a piece of shit, right? Then you're
right.
And you shouldn't be making money for taking an obvious, for choosing one of two options on something that's really difficult, and all of a sudden now you're like a fucking millionaire for this? It's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Okay, so here, let's talk about some other things Candace Owens does. And Alex Jones, I mean, we can go to things. He's the guy who said Sandy Hook was a setup, right?
Well, then in court or in a deposition, he went back and said that he was basically in like a fugue state when he said that, like had a psychotic break and thought that everything was fake. And then he was sued by one of the parents, like one of these, quote, crisis actors, and had to pay up because for defamation. So he did cop to, like,
yeah, and I'm going to track these people more closely because they're to me they're modern day like charlatans. They're snake oil salesmen.
Well, Alex Jones is literally a snake oil salesman, because don't forget he had that silver nitrate whatever beverage you could drink that would cure you or protect you from coronavirus.
It's called immediately, like brain power or something, right?
Yeah, like immediately went to try to sell something.
Right. So like okay. So like so Alex Jones, I listened to him on Joe Rogan, and I think also Tim Dillon was on that episode as well. I like Joe Rogan. I like Tim Dillon also. And actually I think Joe Rogan was doing a really interesting thing on the podcast where he was he would try to slow Alex Jones down and point out stuff he was saying inaccurate. But ultimately, like, I don't know what you gain from this guy. And he, and he was like, "Hey, you pointed out some really interesting stuff to me." But it's like, I don't know. I don't know what you gain. I don't know what you gain for it. I mean, Joe Rogan was more delicate with it than and even Tim Dillon. He was pointing out a lot of stuff that Candace was saying that was inaccurate. I guess it's like, I guess my question here, what I'm circling is there anything to gain from pulling these people out of the fringes? And I think, honestly, the answer might be yes if they're going to be on Fox News. Like, if they're going to be on Fox News, then you might as well bring them into some kind of neutral arena and expose them to somebody. But
yeah.
Because I don't think the solution is like deplatforming people. You know, you're gonna keep if you know. Listen, God, now I'm going to such complicated territory. But like, if it's that's gonna backfire. If it's gonna be like YouTube, Facebook, all of these, all your documented, liberally run companies, you know, that are just gonna keep deplatforming right wing people. That's just gonna backfire. Like, I don't know. It's going to be like, oh, look at private industry against these people. So it's complicated. Like, it's very touchy.
Yeah, well, and there's always, you know, you move them off of once, like Facebook will move QAnon off of its site, so it has no liability there. But then, you know, they're still going to find their clandestine corners of the internet to like congregate and talk about the same shit.
Yeah, like, I don't know where the line is and whatnot. I just feel like there's something about deplatforming that it almost emboldens somebody. It makes them more relevant. It also kind of like makes me almost a little defensive of the First Amendment, you know? And then I start almost like defending them.
Well, like Facebook is different, but like on YouTube, like when Alex Jones was deplatformed from YouTube, I mean, he's getting paid, you know, he's making ad dollars from being on there. So I think you can justify that, but you know.
Right. I don't know. But okay, so I mean, we'll focus on Alex Jones in another episode. This stuff's complicated. I'm interested to hear what you guys have to say. Hit us at regularguynews@gmail.com. This stuff's complicated. This is, you know, I think that as we move into this healing process of post-Trump era America, I think this is how we do it. Is we have to question how we get. There needs to be personal responsibility for us. We need to learn. It almost, I don't know, maybe be taught in school like how to take in information, right?
Right.
You know, like, anyway, because something that Candace Owens does that's very slick is when she's having a conversation, because she knows what she's doing. I mean, she would destroy me if she came on here right now, you know, because she's got all her talking points down. You know what I mean? Like, she's prepared. I'm here admitting that this shit's confusing and I don't know. Someone like that's gonna destroy me. Because they're going to seem like they know it all, but they don't know shit. Well, and I'll prove it in a million things she said, you know?
She went toe-to-toe with Cardi B on social media. And, you know, it's like, of course, she said, like, I destroyed Cardi B, but then all the Cardi fans, like me, were like, well, no way, because, you know, she points out all these things, and then it's as simple as saying, well, what you're saying about Joe Biden, about Cardi B, all these people, it's like, these are the exact things that you can say about your president. So where does she draw the line there?
That's true, because she was saying that Cardi B is like illiterate, right?
Called her illiterate. Just like, I don't even remember the context of the whole argument. She went on Fox News, and then of course there was a tweet from Candace Owens from a couple years ago where she said Cardi B is like a black revolutionary, like very complimentary. So, you know.
Yeah, and that's what you're talking about. See, that's what you're talking. That's the comedian thing, finding your voice as an entertainer, and that's what a lot of these people are doing. They're finding their voice as entertainers, you know, and we should not let them off the hook for it, you know. And she did that. Like, there's a million examples of it. Like, she was originally the head of an anti-Trump website.
Right,
you know?
right.
Like, she finds like pockets to make money. You know,
it's just like Trump becoming president. Like, where can I fit in to profit the most? Have the most power.
Yeah, and these people are, you know, they're snakes. They're kind of survivalists. Like, you'll see that she'll keep twisting, bending, to fit, you know, to like fit into you know, to fit into like. To make money is what I mean.
Right.
You know, she'll
like,
adapt.
what audience can you most easily exploit by saying something sensational to get clicks or ad dollars or whatever?
All I need to hear is, she said this on her podcast, the thing with Tim Dillon. Like, all I need to hear is her say, like, he asked her, like, is there anyone on the left who's scared to debate? And she's like, no, I could tear down any. Like, that's all I need to hear. Then I know you're a pro wrestler, right? Like when you're saying no one has any good ideas and like, it's just, it's you know. Anyway, again, even she has some good ideas. Even she has some good talking points. You know, someone made this point. Alex Newman, who's the one of the co-hosts of the Comedians Wrestling podcast, if you listen, he made this point. He was talking about Jordan Peterson, and he was like, "Yeah, he has some really good ideas," and then a bunch of bad ones to feed his Patreon, and
Right.
you know what I mean? It's so funny. It's why I remember why I started talking about why I started a wrestling podcast at first before this, is because I was like, man, I know wrestling, and if I fucking get wrestling wrong, the consequences are low. If I say a wrestler sucks and then they turn out to be good, I'm happy to admit I was
There's
wrong.
actually
And it happens
zero
all the time.
consequences. Yeah, it happens all the time, and it actually is a benefit. Like,
I mean, God, you
look
want to
how
talk about
things
being a
change.
phony? It's like these people are doing the equivalent, and I'll give examples in a second. They're doing the equivalent of what I did with this wrestler named Becky Lynch, okay?
Who's my favorite wrestler now?
Okay, yeah, you don't have to know anything about wrestling to appreciate this, but there's this wrestler named Becky Lynch who is like arguably the most successful female wrestler maybe ever now
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah, the
She's
best.
headlined WrestleMania, right? She's done really all you can do. And I would talk about how bad she was for a while.
For years, yes.
And then all of a sudden, she changed up her character a little bit and had this moment where she actually bled out of her nose, and it was amazing. She killed it. And then I did stand-up one night, and she was in the audience hysterically laughing. She came backstage, and I was like, yo, I'm a huge fan. I'm like, you're the best. Can I take a picture with you? But because I'm full of shit, and that's okay. You know what I mean?
Right.
Oh, because I keep it I keep it responsible, baby. Talking about wrestling is responsible.
You're never like dug in too deep to turn on a wrestler, and like much like Candace Owens, can turn on her political beliefs with being
That's what I'm saying.
anti-Trump and now
Can you
pro-Trump.
imagine? Okay, so here, let's give you an example. Candace Owens talking about the NRA. Okay, she was on Fox News. I actually watched this clip. She said this line that went viral, and she said that the National Rifle Association was founded as a civil rights organization that protected black people from the KKK. And then the other Fox News host, she goes, "Oh, I've never heard that before. That's so interesting." And then in this article, they said she never heard it before because it's a lie.
Right.
And this fact was said by someone named Harry Alford. So she I think she might have just heard that quote and said it. And then PolitiFact said that the NRA. Here's what the NRA themselves say about their founding on their website. Dismayed by the lack of marksmanship shown by their troops, Union veterans William C. Church and George Wingate formed the NRA in 1871. The primary goal of the association was to promote and encourage rifles shooting on a scientific basis. And then it goes on to say, like, this is 1800. So what is she talking
Where's
about?
the civil rights?
Right.
I didn't hear it in there.
Yeah, and here, brief histories of the NRA by the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post contain no such mentions either. We called and emailed the NRA to inquire about the claim. The group offered no response.
Civil rights, never heard of it.
Yeah, so it's she'll just say that on Fox News in front of millions of people. Okay, so I'm just saying these people, they're performers. That's what they are. They're performers because she understands the truth. And her kayfabe, just like McConnell's kayfabe, and kayfabe's a wrestling term meaning their character persona on television, right? Is I'm a truth teller, right? Where like McConnell's thing is like, hey, we decide that on December 8th, and I'm working on the Senate right now, and it's just a way to not answer the question, you know? Her kayfabe, her truth behind this character, she's saying, oh, here's this amazing fact. Her truth is, I don't know if this thing's true. I heard it, right? But I know there's no consequences for going viral. And so she's like, heat is heat. And that's what wrestling ties into all this.
Yeah.
No such thing as good press. In wrestling, if you're getting a reaction, you're doing great work. And that's what it is. These people are professional wrestlers posing as truth tellers. It's so fucking reckless. You know?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's very reckless because your average person, maybe who doesn't watch wrestling or have a concept of this, doesn't realize that, or who doesn't know someone's background or the trouble that they've gotten in before or what their beliefs were before they found this. Like they don't know. So they're just accepted as fact.
Right. Anyway, there's countless quotes we can go into about Candace
Woof.
Owens. I mean, like she said, she says according to this is a tweet. She said according to Black Lives Matter. According to its website, Black Lives Matter is not a charity. It's a full-fledged corporation that does not have any locations. This was fully false. Here, let me click on it. Hold on. Here we go. Like many nonprofit organizations, Black Lives Matter Global Network is incorporated and operates as a charity. The Black Lives Matter Global Network has a fiscal sponsorship with Thousand Currents, a nonprofit that works with grassroots groups and handles Black Lives Matter's finances, including donations. Nonprofit organizations often incorporate to reap tax benefits and legal protections. They enter into fiscal sponsorships when they are not recognized as tax exempt by the IRS. So...
Mm-hmm.
She's just that kind of shorthand. I mean, that's, a byproduct of Twitter that she's willing to exploit because she can live in that gray area if somebody calls her out. She'll be like, yeah, but here's all that stuff. And then you already said the thing about everyone is dying now. And, look, there's a difference. So, anyway, I'm sure we'll visit old Candace Owens as she pops up again. And I'm just saying this, and we'll talk about Alex Jones more as we go forward. It's just the political influencers. It needs to be taken down. And I think, and media has problems, but comparing the media to these guys is not. It's just come on, come on, because right? It's just come on. I mean,
it's like the media, and then there's social media, which is where these people are thriving.
Right. It's like for example, you can, some Candace Owens was talking about coronavirus. She's like, oh look, how come they have a death ticker on CNN or whatever for the coronavirus? It's to scare you. It's like, okay, fine, that's an interesting point. You're like, yeah, the media. Maybe they are funded by ad dollars. Maybe that fear is something that brings them money. Yeah, totally, I get it. Is that more or less dangerous? Is that more or less of a problem than somebody saying that you should not wear masks and coronavirus is a hoax?
Right. It doesn't justify taking the chance of getting someone sick with COVID.
That's what I'm saying. So it's like, this society is so fucking fucked up, man, that this person is making a living. But anyway, I don't know. Hey, if you're a fan of hers, I want to hear from you. That's who I want to hear from. Hit me I know Aaron will sit out, but regularguynews at gmail.com. Let me hear. What am I missing about these people and this job and the delineation between comedian and political influencer? I think there's nothing, Last thing I'll say, and then we'll head for the hills.
Mm-hmm.
I watched on Axios, which is a show I watch now. I'll say Axios, a problem I have with Axios, too edited for me. A little too edited, a little too slick.
Yeah, a little too stylized for you.
A little too stylized for me. So, okay, that's an example of something. If I'm Candace Owens, I'll be like, look how stylized Axios is.
How much does it cost to edit an episode?
Right. But so they had on, I was going to say the Koch brothers, but I think one of them died, so it's the other Koch, the alive Koch. If you know who they are, they're the huge billionaire. They live in Kansas. They're huge billionaire Republican donors. And they've come out recently and said, hey, we fucked up. This dude admitted, he's like, I fucked up. I'm responsible for partisan politics. We were very focused on the Republican Party, putting our money in there, but now we see, and now we see that we're endorsing these candidates who are saying stuff that's frankly un-American, Man, these guys. I never seen anything that was more transparent to me of this is you could see the two guys sitting there because the Axios guys, the Axios people are fucking excellent. journalist. And
Yeah.
he was like, okay, fine. Well, how do you feel about like the Supreme Court? How do you feel about all the senators you've backed? And they're like, yeah, we like all them. They're like, we like all of them. Yeah. And you're like, oh, what's going on is like these guys had like a rebrand meeting, like a corporate rebrand meeting, which was
Yeah,
like,
totally.
right? Where they're like, hey, the modern Republican Party with Trump is going to die. We're going to be on the wrong side of history by trying to latch ourselves here. So you could see it's like the most like corporate strategy move I've ever seen to be like, we don't want to be associated with that. And they're like, we'll start now to get ahead of it.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, because they know like you can't leave your star hitched to Trump's wagon in December of 2020. Like they see what's coming. It's like they're looking ahead to Q1 of 2021 and they know that that's not a good look for them.
Right, and I think they were not pro-Trump or anything, Like I think that they were active. I don't. They didn't really get into Trump, but I know, like, I don't think they were supporting Trump. Maybe the first time, but I don't even know. But like, they still were supporting Perdue in governor in Georgia, for Senate. Like they're backing him with a bunch of money.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, he represents our values, and they're fine with the court. So it's like, it's this fucking PR move.
Yeah.
The Axios guy did everything but call that out, and it was pretty slick. But yeah, those people are dangerous in another way. But anyway, we'll keep an eye on those guys. We'll keep an eye on political influencers. But man, my conclusion here is like these people capitalize on how confusing everything is. I'm looking at this stuff for this podcast once a week. Plus, I watch the news all the time, and I'm reading articles. I'm more of an article person than a book person, which I'm trying to change because I love books. But since the advent of social media and
short
the phone,
attention spans,
my attention span is so short. I'm like the classic bop. I got 40 screens going at the same time, guy. And I saw my wife sit down with a book the other day, just like on the porch. Coffee, feet up, reading a book with like a sweatshirt on. And I was like, wow, my jealousy for that is unbelievable. I'm like, I want to be able to just like,
oh yeah.
I know you can do it.
Yeah. I've read 47 books this year so far. I'm almost to my goal.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
really
cruising.
awesome.
Quarantine,
Yeah. Anyway, but it's just like, man, I don't think we cannot let these people off the hook. And the only people calling these people out are comedians. We could say like these comedians I'm talking about who kind of like, let's say they enable them. I'm actually kind of defending them because I think they're doing what I do, which is following their intellectual curiosity. You know what I mean? And also finding provocative places to make comedy. But man, these people, fuck these people.
Fuck these people. Okay, glad you said it first.
Yeah, fuck these people. And also, even if they have good ideas, they're pointless. Because
yes, and like if you're listening to them, like there should be a level of like investigation into what someone like Candace Owens is saying, who has no like default credibility in this field. Like,
yeah, don't fool me.
Look, yeah, don't get fooled.
Because the thing about it is that I have not cynicism, maybe that is the word, I don't know, but I have whatever's inside of me that draws these people to those people, right? Like, I have, like, this kind of rebel spirit that, like, why I do comedy in the first place, why I'm like, it sucks that I have to, like, just take what the TV gives me. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just taking that, like, fuck the man. But like, ultimately, you have to use common sense at some point and be like, if someone is willing to say things this inaccurate, right, and live in such a conspiracy place, they can't have any integrity. And integrity is really what needs to come back.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens in everything. We now with our voices we're all questioning the man. We all want our voice to be heard, but like that's a good thing, but only if we can, as a society, be responsible with it and not be taken advantage of by this stuff. Because I'm noticing a trend that's like people hate media so much that they are like, I'm looking for someone else. Now, Ben Shapiro, I want to get deeper into as we go on. I don't have a full conclusion about him. The
He's
one thing
like the white male Candace Owens, right?
yeah. But I haven't, and I think Candace Owens is now on Daily Wire where he operates now. But I haven't watched enough of him. Like, I've seen him on Bill Maher, and I've seen him have some conversations that are semi decent before, but I haven't like seen him in his true element, and I haven't done what I did here for Candace yet. So I will. But one thing I can say about Ben Shapiro is that I felt like the one conversation I heard from him recently, I don't know where it was, maybe Joe Rogan. Yeah, it was Joe Rogan. Is he's very robotic, right? He does a thing that irks me where people don't talk about they talk about life in a way that is ignoring all feeling, all reality, and almost like all mental health issues to simplify it in the most way. Like, for example, it'll be like, hey, well, you don't need a toilet to live. Like something like that. You know what I mean?
Right,
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you could just shit on the floor. Like, honestly, if you think about it, it's like
right.
you don't need to shit in a toilet. And then you're like, hey, but are you talking about like what's the long-term effects of like not having a toilet, or like the integrity of every time you need to take a shit, you have to dig a hole. All right. I don't know why this is where it went. I sometimes go to primitive examples. Yeah. But you're like that, where you're like, I'll give another example of this. I had an argument. I play Magic the Gathering, the card game. I had an argument with a guy behind the counter of a store one time, where I was like, yeah, they should make these cards cheaper because kids need them to play, Right. And they're like $70 per card, and you need 4 in a deck. Like, I think about, and then he's just like, you don't need them. You don't have to build that deck. You can build a different deck, a cheaper one. Build that. And you're like, have you been a child? Have you been someone who's in school when everyone has something that you don't have?
Yeah, you don't need the Adidas shoes. You get the ones with the 4 stripes that everyone knows are Bobo.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you've been the guy with the Fugazi jeans? You've been the guy with the Bobo Adidas? Like, you know what, like, you know what I mean? Like, do you live on this planet? Like, yeah, you're right. You don't need somewhere to shit. You don't need those cards. Right. But what does that do to your integrity? Like, do you feel like you belong? Do you feel equal? Do you, right? And, like, is that correct that a corporation should capitalize on price gouging for kids? What are we talking about? Yeah, you're right. You can work around it. It's fine. I guess that's the lesson, is that the corporation's allowed to do whatever they want. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's what I've noticed about him, and people are really attracted to that argument, except for when it comes to them. And that's why Gavin Newsom goes to a restaurant. That's why Nancy Pelosi gets her hair done. Because we're lacking human conversation on both sides of the aisle. Like, the Democrats are acting like, oh yeah, like, lock yourself up, we can't go anywhere, like, do it for the good of everyone. And you're like, well, I don't know if my grandma's gonna be alive next Thanksgiving. Maybe she wants to, like, die on the sword or whatever, like, like hey,
yeah,
right? And you're like, that's like, there's an argument to be made there. And then the Republicans are like, fuck this virus. It doesn't exist.
It's a hoax.
It's a hoax. And you're like, okay, well, also that is ignoring these people who are suffering from these symptoms. It's pretty insensitive to your neighbor who's a long hauler, So that's fucking, the answer for all of this is, who the fuck knows? I don't know. I have no idea. That's why I'm here. That's what RGN is. What the fuck? What is happening? Should I just start being like, Hitler's the best? Like, should I start doing that?
Right.
Is that what I should do?
If you put that out there and then had like a series of tweets that justified it, you could really pick up steam, Dan.
Yeah, people will be like, this guy Dan Black, he's Jewish and he thinks Hitler's the best.
Sensationalist, yeah.
And I mean, like, is that the only way to fucking get listens anymore? Like,
you do that, and then you pick the next thing, and then it just snowballs from there. Next thing you know, you're the new political influencer.
That's what. All right. Actually, maybe I'm going to decide between now and the next episode of RGN if that my persona will be someone who thinks all genocidal maniacs are cool.
Maybe for RGN, you can go under deep cover as a new political influencer by the name
Candace
Donnie
Owens.
Twitter clicks. Yeah.
Donnie Twitter clicks. I should start a fake Twitter that's just like. It's like a Russian bot, It's just
yeah.
Oh my God. It's like you have like, everyone has that uncle who loves to be like, I don't watch the news. I don't, and you're like, I don't, and you're like, we need to drop the cynicism. Like, there's a difference between fucking a company that is like, because like I could watch CNN and like there's so much bullshit editorial that I'm like, God, like Don Lemon does it the most in my opinion. Where
Well,
I'm
that's
like,
what Don Lemon does.
right. I'm like, okay, all right. But there's just a difference in that and what these people are doing. It's sickening to me. Anyway, hit us up, regularguynews@gmail.com. Tell one friend about the show. Rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, or else you know what's going to happen. I'm going to become a political influencer.
You're going to leave Dan no choice but to become a political influencer to drive ad dollars.
That's right. The question is there a market for saying I don't know? There needs to be. That's what this is. That's what the RGN pod is.
Is there a market for? Well, this podcast is still free, so.
Oh, yeah. We're going behind the paywall tomorrow, and I'm going to talk about how great Pol Pot was. I don't know anything about Pol Pot, except he's a talking point.
Yet. You don't know
dude.
yet.
Not yet, but I'm going to tell you, I think he had some good ideas. I don't know. Oh, man. Anyway, we should lock that in?
Lock it in, baby.
Yeah, lock it in. Everybody, thanks for coming to the podcast this week. Aaron, thank you for bringing us all the hot action with Cardi B.
Oh, wow. You're welcome.
Absolutely. And coming in live all the way from 1 mile away from my apartment. And hearing
I'm going
me
to go on a
yell.
walk later. Maybe I'll see you.
I think I yelled a lot this week, so thank you for hearing me yell.
Yeah.
I think I had a lot of
welcome.
big Thanksgiving energy to get out.
I feel like politically influenced after this episode.
Well, you're going to go change the world? All right, great. Everybody, thanks for coming by the podcast this week. Thank you for stopping in RGN, the regular guy news, the least pretentious thing in news. Tell everybody about the show. Get informed, kind of. I don't know. And most importantly, everybody, as I always say, stay regular.